I speak a lot on this channel about the decay of college campus culture, from Evergreen to Wilfrid Laurier to Berkeley to Mizzou. The first incident I remember really opening my eyes was the outburst at Yale over Halloween costumes.
No, I don't agree with that.
Then why the fuck did you accept the position?
Because
Who
I have
the fuck hired you?
I have a different
You
vision
should
than you.
step down. If that is what you think about being a master, you should step down. It is not about creating an intellectual space. It is not.
If the absurdity of the substance doesn't wake you up, the sheer shrillness assuredly will. And I care so much about maintaining, or maybe at this point restoring, the value and integrity of a college education, not because I disagree with the messages being espoused on these campuses, though I clearly do and frequently discuss why. Not because I want to be surrounded by neighbors who agree with me in life, but because I want to be surrounded by critical thinkers. I want to be surrounded by open-minded thinkers, people who ask questions, people who challenge conventional wisdom, people who believe in reason and evidence to win the day. And I do not want neighbors who try to coerce me into accepting their dogmatic worldview or facing their consequences if I dare to resist. The decay of the American college campus is a major cultural problem, but it's one that may correct itself as students become more attracted to schools that uphold an unwavering commitment to intellectual diversity and free speech, like the University of Chicago and others. Or as more prospective students realize that acquiring a six-figure debt to be told what to think, as opposed to being challenged to learn how to think, isn't a worthwhile endeavor, and instead opt for apprenticeships or trade school or the military or anything else. It's one thing to offer indoctrination to adults who are mentally equipped to recognize it and free to opt out at any time. But what happens when the indoctrination enters the world of your typical K-12 public school? What happens when the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic are replaced with the only R that matters to these ideologues? Racial justice. We've got a case study available, profiled recently in the Weekly Standard, inside a public school social justice factory. This being the story of a multi-year effort at the Edina School District in Minnesota to make racial equity a primary focus. Edina is a wealthy Twin Cities suburb, and historically its school district is a high-performing one. And still is. Its high school ranks as the state's 4th highest performer, according to U.S. News and World Report's criteria. But Edina has a problem that exists in most school districts across the country: achievement gaps along racial and socioeconomic lines. Students of certain backgrounds struggling to perform as well as others. To address this issue, the Edina School District created its All for All policy, finalized in April 2013, for the purpose of ensuring high levels of learning for all, including measured growth and high achievement for each and every student without predictable links to race or income. A noble goal, but the issues that arise here are more problems of how rather than problems of what. To achieve that goal, the district planned several actions, including hiring racially conscious teachers and administrators, training all those staff in supporting diverse cultures, and outreach to parents with a focus on racial and cultural diversity. This all-for-all policy has manifested itself in different ways across the school district, but based on the news coverage, it doesn't look like any part of the system, from the core of students and teachers to the administration to even logistics like bus driving, were unaffected. Consider some of these stories. At Highlands Elementary School, students in kindergarten through the 2nd grade participate in what's called the Melanin Project, where children trace their hands, color them in the applicable shade, and learn that no shade is better than any other. In addition, these kids have been drawing self-portraits to organize around racial messaging. The kids have been subjected to loosely political messages about diversity and inclusion. All of this under the leadership of the school's principal posting pro-Women's March images to her Twitter account under the school's name. And according to the coverage, the principal's now privatized blog for the school's community promoted Black Lives Matter and rainbow flags among other activist messages. Consider some of the educational curriculum at Edina High School, where reportedly a required sophomore English class focuses on the themes of colonization, immigration, and the social constructions of race, class, and gender, elsewhere characterized as aiming for the eradication of white privilege. I wasn't able to confirm the rubric for that class myself, but that description is at least somewhat consistent with the syllabus for a junior level English class, which aims to apply Marxist, feminist, and post-colonial lenses to its reading material. Now maybe that's that's one isolated case. Maybe I'm missing the alternative class, which applies competing philosophical lenses for analysis. But consider the origin of this entire controversy. After the presidential election, some 80 staff members signed on to an anti-Trump editorial in the student newspaper, which read in part, "Many of you students have made clear that right now you don't feel physically safe. Know that we will do all that we can to fight for you and that we will teach rebellion against a broken world." The staff who signed on to this letter were reportedly mostly teachers, but the efforts of Edina's All for All plan go beyond students and educators. Consider the story of an Edina bus driver whose widow sent a 25-page educational curriculum for a training session to the think tank investigating this issue. The training session was entitled Edina School District Equity and Racial Justice Training, Moving from a Diversity to a Social Justice Lens. Reportedly, trainers instructed bus drivers that dismantling white privilege is at the core of our work as white folks, and that working for the district requires a major paradigm shift in the thinking of white people. Now, you might be wondering how reframing the racial philosophies of bus drivers is supposed to serve that original goal of eliminating racial and socioeconomic achievement gaps. Well, keep wondering, because we're now almost 4 years into this initiative, and the available data do not show that goal being served. Starting from the 2014 baseline, academic proficiency for all students in Edina public schools has actually dropped slightly from 80.9% to 80%, meaning the annual goals for proficiency growth have yet to be met in any single year either. And no single racial group has meaningfully improved, with Asians being the high performer, merely staying stable. Large racial achievement gaps still exist, and after a year of improvement in 2015, proficiency for Black students is down relative to the 2014 baseline. The same goes for the proficiency of Hispanic students, which had the largest decline of any racial group. The proficiency drop was most significant at the high school level, where math scores for 11th grade Black students at Edina Senior High were cut in half, from 31% proficiency to 14.6%. In reading at Edina Senior High, 10th grade Black students dropped from 52% to 40% proficiency. Now, a few important things to note. Despite this current slip, the Edina School District still ranks as a top state performer, well above state average over the same time period. In addition, the coverage of this issue is published by members of a conservative think tank, which is itself activist in nature. I've done my best to verify their claims independently, but I can't verify them all. And of course, simple correlation does not imply causation. Absent the ability to control for other variables, we shouldn't assume that the all-for-all racial equity policy in the Edina School District is singularly responsible for failing to meet proficiency goals, and indeed declining proficiency among demographics the policy seeks to serve most. But we can say with confidence that it's not working, that it's not serving its stated purpose, even if we think that purpose is a noble one, that perhaps critical thinking, rather than the uncritical promotion and acceptance of dogma, is a better route to take if your aim is cultivating intellectually nimble minds who can confront and solve problems, rather than just repeat the lines you tell them to. But I want to be fair to the Edina School District. A lot of the coverage I've seen hasn't offered them much of a response. But there's enough evidence here that I hope we get to hear them answer the question. It doesn't appear that your efforts are working. So why do you suppose that is? It'll be a good critical thinking exercise for the leadership in that district, whether or not they choose to challenge their students with similar puzzles to solve. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.